Good morning, family. How y'all doing? Hope y'all doing well this morning. Uh, as always, man, it's good to be up and about on this Monday morning. And as always, man, we're gonna be positive. We got a couple of things that we have to talk about. We have to get clear, but we'll get it done. Okay. All right. So now, one of the things that we need to do as a bit of a housekeeping, we had a very lively discussion, I would say, uh, this Friday, and we had a discussion about single parents, single mothers, single fathers, things of that sort, switching roles, and how masculinity and femininity really in the household, they complement each other and they serve to reinforce positive influence in within the family. But then toward the end of the discussion, we had a question come up, and I think it's noteworthy that we clear the air. Let's get this resolved once and for all, okay? So is there a difference between the word given or give and force? So you give someone something or you force someone to take something. I know by the way that I just described it, of course, there has to be a difference, but now what I'm referring to is the conversation that we had at the end of the discussion about the sisters in our community, especially the sisters toward the 1950s and 60s, where they given the role of headship in the community or were they forced to take that role. So before we get into that discussion, let's just get a simple definition of both words. To give means to freely transfer the possession of something to someone, to hand it over. Okay, that's understandable. But to force means that it is obtained or imposed by coercion or physical power. So which one of those describes the plight of our sisters in regards to single parent families, especially in the 50s and the 60s? Now, why do we focus on the 50s and the 60s? We are in that particular era. We've gone through the civil rights movement, right? Rights are being extended to individuals all throughout our community. But why do we pick the 50s and the 60s? I'll tell you why. You might not be familiar, but in 1965, there was a report that was given to President Lyndon B. Johnson. And the writer of the report was named Daniel Patrick Moynihan. I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing it wrong. Now, the report was titled The Negro Family, the Case for National Action. As I mentioned, that was published in 1965, okay? Now, in this particular report, the Moynihan report, really what it did, it shined the light on the institution of the Black family. Now, here's what a synopsis of that particular report is. Now, this is what was written. It said Moynihan argued that without access to jobs and means to contribute meaningfully to a family, Black men would become systematically alienated from their roles as husbands and fathers, which would cause rates of divorce, child abandonment, and out of wedlock births to skyrocket in the Black community, leading to vast increases in the numbers of households headed by females. Now, does that sound accurate? Or does that sound like Moynihan was right on the money? Well, you can see that for yourself. So now, what is the reason why? What is the reason why? Moynihan himself says that there is no access to jobs. And so because they couldn't work, then they couldn't add anything meaningful to their families. And so you can see how the roles are beginning to shift. They're beginning to change over because in the household, if the father can't work and there's opportunity for the mother to work, in order for the household to run, then the mother's going to work. That's an easy situation to look at. But now here's the thing. Is this a situation that she chose, or is this a situation that was forced upon her? Think about it now. In any other community that you look at during the 50s and the 60s, there was headship in the family by the husband, by the man. And so the man would go out and work and get the resources necessary for the family. He'd bring them back and make sure that everything was good, while his wife would take care of all of the duties and responsibilities that surround the household itself. So that was how things were done. That was the pattern. In most American families, that's how they approached life as a family. But now in regards to the African American family, the roles were switched, and we see they're switched because of what Monahan said. If the man is not able to work and the wife is, then the roles of headship switch out. Because think about it now, you're looking at a situation where an individual who goes out and works and acquires the resources is normally the person that is the head of the household. Now, we're not talking about anything traditional or biblical. We're just looking at the facts of it. The individual who goes out and acquires the resources to keep the household going usually assumes the position of being the head of household. And if the husband, because of the social climate that existed in the 50s and the 60s, was not able to go out and get those resources that were necessary, but the wife was, then the roles switch out. So does that sound like something that she was given, or does that sound like something she was forced to do? Now, if you watch the last part of the conversation that we had on Friday evening, my stance was clear. This is not something that she wanted. What group of women do you know that wants to deal with the difficulties associated with being a man? Because that's what she was asked to do. She was put into that position. So you tell me, I'm trying to understand. This is not a situation that any group of women would want to be involved in. Now, of course, you have women that are independent and that, you know, they work and they acquire what they need, but if given the opportunity, hey, Tasha, how you doing? T-Mac, what's going on? But if given the opportunity, as a whole, women would prefer that they be able to live according to how they are created. Now, what do I mean by that? When you look at a woman and you think about her anatomy, right? The way that she's built, she is in all situations built for nurturing. Even the nourishment that a baby needs, they get that nourishment from the mother. They're calmed when they're crying by the mother. So her role is to nurture and to make sure that everyone, right, is emotionally stable. She handles that. But now look at the anatomy of a man. On average, men have more muscle fiber than women. Our very makeup is one that's disposed toward work, disposed toward going out and being effective in bringing resources back to our household. That's how we're built. So if we're built that way, why would you put someone who's better geared toward nurturing in that position when you have someone that's better fit to that position because they're built that way? Does that make sense? To swap out? So it cannot be the case that the sisters among us, especially in the 50s and the 60s, it cannot be the case that they were given this. This was not a willing exchange. This was something that happened because of the climate of racism and segregation. And so individuals who would normally be in position to work, they couldn't. And so the wives had to do what they needed to do in order to keep the household running. I don't want to hear anything else about this. Do you understand me? I'm being bold about it because this is an issue that we have to put to rest. And as men, as brothers, it's time to understand that even though she was forced into this particular situation, it's our responsibility now that we're looking back and we recognize what's happening. It's our responsibility to take on what we're supposed to be doing. Our very nature is to provide and to protect. So we need to be doing that. And it's a need. It's something that's needed. And I think Jay made a point during our discussion that really hit home. Jay Johnson. And why are we talking about that? Let me stop for a moment. Let me say this. I really appreciate the panelists, Tasha, Willie. Thank y'all for coming on. Thank y'all for sharing y'all thoughts. We're going to do it again Friday. No doubt about it. We're going to do it. Okay? But now, getting back to what we were saying, because of the fact that we realize now that it's necessary for men in our community to take the lead in families, that's what we should do. Because now, what did the Monahan report say? If we were not allowed to take the lead in our families as we should, notice this again. Now, I want you to hear this. It said it will cause rates of divorce, child abandonment, out of wedlock births to skyrocket. Can't you see that? The divorce rate is 50-50. Child abandonment is on the rise, and out of wedlock births is one of the things that we see as a mainstay in our community. So it would appear that the standard has changed, because instead of having a two-parent household, most households you see today in our community are single-parent families headed by mothers. It's a matriarchy. Whereas every other ethnic group has a patriarchy, we have a matriarchy. So the roles have reversed, but here are the results. And just like he said in 1965, that's absolutely happening now. It's happening now because the man in the African American community is not the head of the family. Now, are we discrediting the single parent families, the mothers who are out there trying to raise their sons and their daughters? Absolutely not. That's not what we're doing. We're not discrediting anyone. What we're doing is saying that now we see the cause of the situation. So we have to step in and do something different. We have to step in and do something different. Because here's the thing, and this is a premise that you might not agree with, but after you think about it, it rings true. If in 1960, there's a mother and she has a child, let's say, for instance, this child is a girl, and she falls into the category of being a single mother, and her daughter watches her go through all of the difficulties that surround providing for her family as a single parent, right? And so that's the only thing that girl knows. And so that generational curse, because that's what it is passed on to the woman's daughter. And from the time from 1960 until now, in that particular family, can you see how, if that particular mindset of being a single, independent woman, not needing a man, if you pass that on down to now, can you see how destructive that could be? So now you produced a whole family line of individuals who have an imbalanced view of the world around them. That's what it is, y'all. I'm sorry. I don't mean to rub anyone the wrong way, but that's what it is. If you were raised in a situation where there's only one parent that was there to care for you, we're not discrediting their effort. We appreciate their effort. But you got to understand that that's not the way things were meant to be. As I said before, how many people did it take to bring you into the world? 2. So wouldn't it be fair to say that 2 should be responsible for taking care of you and making sure that you grow into a productive and a well-balanced adult? Just think about that for a moment. Just let that rest on you. And as the day goes by, just think about the ramifications of what that would mean for our community. Men taking their role as head of the household, women taking their role as supporting their husband, and the 2 of them together raising children in a balanced and productive way. Now, we won't get into the statistics of what that means, the difference between being raised by a single parent and being raised in a 2-parent household, because the stats are clear on that. There is a decided proportion of difference between what one is able to achieve and what the other is. There's a gap there. And the gap is because of the social differences. Because an individual that's raised by a single parent family, if they're not mentored, if they're not given a balanced approach throughout life, then there's a social disconnect, especially with boys. Because now boys, we require discipline, we require structure. And if that's not there, when we get into the world, then we don't know how to respond to it. We don't know how to respond to discipline and structure because we've never seen it before. That's because the father was missing. Do you see how this continues to roll into bigger and worse things? See, that's something we got to realize. We got to realize that both parents are necessary. Sisters can't say, well, I don't need no man. I can do it all myself. And brothers can't say, I don't need no woman. If we want our community to get better, if we want our community to thrive, we need both to be present, working together. That's just the way it needs to be, y'all. But now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, that's just your thoughts, Marcus. That's just what you believe. Well, do I have any examples of what it means to be raised by a single parent and an individual can see the outcome that's coming? Can you look at an example and say, oh man, I see some difficulty coming here. Let's take a look. I want to show you something.
Well, we
But now, before I get to the video, let me say something. Y'all know my stance about profanity. You know that's not something that I do or something that I sign on for. But I left it in this particular clip because I wanted to emphasize a point. Okay? Let's get to it.
Well, we
No. You were banned last time after the lady told you to stay out.
What are you talking about? What manager? What store manager? We need to get our stuff.
Is this the express lane?
No, there's no express lane.
I need to get my stuff.
No, leave. You're banned from the store. You have to leave.
Why am I being
Because it's his, what he's doing, and you're not doing anything about it.
What can I do? If I hit my kid, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna go to jail.
You don't come
right?
in. This is called jail. You're letting him do this.
I'm gonna go to jail.
Leave.
I can't do that.
Leave.
I'm never gonna hit my
Leave the
kid.
store.
I need to get my stuff.
You're not getting anything. Leave.
No, shut the fuck up!
Leave.
I can't get my stuff.
No, leave.
They're not gonna go to another store. Too warm.
You're banned. Don't come back. I was told when you come in, just stop. I'm on one.
I'm told what?
You're going.
Wow. So did the video make its point? I hope that it did. This is the reason why I say, brothers, we are needed. Now more than ever before. We are needed in our community. We needed in our families. So you mean to tell me that this single mother here who's dealing with this little boy, and the boy is using words that I have never used in my entire life, and I'm 38 years old, and his mother is trying to navigate the situation as best she possibly can. She's trying to buy some things that they need for the family, but you notice the little boy is snatching things off the counter and throwing them on the floor. The young man at his age, sad to say, is absolutely out of control. He's out of control. And his mother has taken a stance that I think is absolutely going to be harmful to the young man as he grows up. She says she's not going to whip her child. She's not going to discipline her child, but for fear that she may be thrown in jail. Well, I got news for you. You ready? Everybody put the hand over the heart because it's going to be a little rough, okay? If you don't whoop that joker now, right? Because you scared you going to jail, in the future, he going to go to jail. And I put that in the vernacular on purpose. Sorry. But that's the reality of the situation. Out of control at that age. So where is the father in that particular instance? And I know a lot of the brothers are going to be upset with me for going this route, but I have to. Where is the father in this particular instance? Because if a father was there, right, and he knew that his behavior would bring consequences, I guarantee you he would not be behaving like that with his mother in the store. I guarantee you he wouldn't. Growing up as a young man, that was always foremost in my mind, that if I didn't behave the way I should, there were going to be consequences and repercussions and furniture moving. You understand what I mean? And so I think that that the thought for this morning should be that we need to assume the roles within our community that'll help us to grow and be more productive. We're complaining about the young boys that are going straight from high school to jail. We're complaining about individuals selling drugs. We're complaining about the violence and the shootings and the killings. Well, why not assume the role that you should have? Assume the role so that the next generation that comes through understands that these things are not something that we're going to tolerate. Because see, as men, we set the standard. We set the standard for how things in the community are going to happen. We should be setting the standard. In every other ethnic group, they're setting the standard. I'm not making a comparison, but what I'm saying is that I am for what works. And traditionally, the role of a man in the household being the head, him operating in leadership, has worked. We're built for it. This is who we are as men. And the sooner that we accept the responsibilities that we need to shoulder, then the sooner the community can get back on its feet and we can move forward in a positive direction. Look, I hope that wasn't too heavy. This was a response based upon the conversation, like I mentioned, that we had during that discussion, during the panel discussion. I don't want to hear it. I don't. I don't believe, I know that the women in our community were not given this responsibility. It was forced upon them. And so it's our thought, it's our notion in our community now that that's the way it's supposed to be, that the women should be taking the lead. But now, if that's the case, then that would mean that the difficulties that we face wouldn't be present. Those things that we recounted, they wouldn't be an issue if things were the way they're supposed to be. That's just my thoughts for the morning, man. Something kind of heavy, I know. I want to personally thank all of the single parents out there working hard. You're in situations where this is a problem that you have to deal with solely, but we encourage you to keep going. We encourage you because if for nothing at all, and for nothing else, I should say, you are the reason why the community as a whole has survived. But now it's time to thrive. It's time to get up on our feet and do the things that are necessary so that we can create a better world for the next generation that comes. It's up to us. We can do it. I know we can. We are a strong people. We always have been. And that Monahan report, even he said that any lesser people would have just been wiped off the face of the planet. But because of our resiliency, because of our strength, because of our unwillingness to yield to things that are negative, we're still here. And I think that strength will be able to give us what we need in order to rebuild our families and our communities. That's our thought for this morning, man. As always, have a wonderful week. Have a productive week. All of the goals that you have set, I hope you reach them. I hope you achieve them. And as always, man, don't let that negativity rub off on you. Continue to be positive. Continue to work in the positive direction, and positive things will happen for you. Well, I thank you for being with me this morning. And we appreciate you coming up this early and watching me talk and run my head. Thank you so much. As we mentioned, have a good week. Be easy.